Slavery in Brazil by Nate Hartley and Hugh Bennett.
History of slaves in Brazil. 500 years ago, African slaves were imported to make the largest sugar plantation economy in the world. Almost 5 million Africans came to Brazil and were abducted from Africa. 10 times more Africans live in Brazil than some countries in Africa today. Pearl diving. Pearl diving was when slaves were taken out on ships and forced to dive down and retrieve oysters so that they could open up the oysters and get the precious pearls out so that their slave masters could sell and gain profit from it.
What is Kalundu? Kalundu is a dance that is really martial arts. It was disguised as martial arts so that the slave owners could not tell the slaves were practicing self-defense. How the transatlantic slave trade has shaped modern Brazil. Slavery has shaped modern Brazil in many different ways, as religion was created by the slaves who needed hope. Cultural recipes were passed down through generations, and many people of African descent now live in Brazil due to them being brought from Africa.
Primary documents. Why do you think the imperial Brazilian mine was abandoned? I think we think the imperial Brazilian mine was abandoned because the slave owners didn't want their slaves to gain knowledge. If the slaves became smart, they may be able to overthrow and revolt against the slave owners.
Describe some common punishments in Brazil. Some would receive novenas, which was whippings for 9 days straight. Was where the slaves would be tied to a cart and receive 200 to 300 lashings. Lashings are just like whippings, as like they would beat them on the back and it would rip open their flesh. They would also put cayenne pepper and salt into the wounds. They told them it would heal them up, but it actually just caused them more pain.
Why would slave owners not want his slave to be exposed to religion? The slave owners wanted the slaves to view them as superior to them, and if the slaves had a religion, then they might start to believe in a higher power and that the slave owners were not superior.
Both paragraphs does it appear that slaves are helpless individuals. The slave owners did indeed make the slaves helpless because they had no rights, religion, representation, and were strictly dependent on their slave owners to give them food or clothes. Slaves controlled their slaves and punished them when and how they wanted. They could also be free. They could also whenever they felt like it.
And these are our citations.